In studio, we are talking about eradicating female genital mutilation, just stressing how we have fared in the journey to end this vice. Our target is the year 2022. The global target is the year 2030. Can we meet this target? What have we done? How much ground is left for us to cover as a country? What do we need to do in between? And what is your role and my role in this journey? That is what we have been talking about with a panel of two, a lady and a gentleman. Judie Kaberia, she is the gender media trainer at Journalists for Human Rights, and of course also having a male champion in this conversation, Mwebia, the founder and executive director, Men and FGM. In case you're just joining us, please continue interacting with us on social media at KBC Channel 1, at Serfine_Achieng on Twitter, and Serfine Achieng on Facebook. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we went to that particular link, this conversation has actually started to, take a very good direction for me from where I sit, because we are providing solutions for some of the, I would say, gaps that we still have in the journey to eradicate female genital mutilation. And I want us to just pick up from there. And Judie, just from your understanding of the cultural perspective, like what Tony was sharing earlier, what do you think would be the best approach, the best strategy to sink into their world and to understand this vice from their perspective so that we can generate long-lasting solutions? What is it that you think it will be the silver bullet in this?
Actually, from experience, one time I attended a gathering of, members of the Maasai community. And actually we had different government officials trying to tell them, if you do this, you'll go to jail. This is what the law says. And they don't care because they don't understand the law to them. Mm-hmm. For them, the cultural attachment to this practice is strong and stronger than the law, that the law is nothing compared to what they feel about female genital mutilation. And that's why I think one of the things is to have a dialogue, is to have, sitting together, talking to each other, not just, going right forward and starting to condemn immediately, but first is trying to understand where are they coming from. Why is this thing so strong to them? And by sitting down together, having that dialogue and having that conversation, then this helps us to understand also what is best to work for them. At the end of the day, we know the end result. The end result is that this is a dangerous practice that has to go away. Then which is the effective way of getting it away? We've realized that we've put the laws on the Constitution. We've put everything that needs to be put on paper. It is there, but still it has not worked. We've threatened with arresting people, but still it has not worked. Yes, it has reduced, but we are saying we cannot afford to lose a single girl because of female genital mutilation. We cannot afford to lose any single life of any person because of a harmful cultural practice. For as long as any child, any woman is under threat, then we are not yet done with our work. So that is why I'm saying the best thing is for us to sit down together. Let us have a dialogue. Let us educate them, and let us involve everybody. Let us involve the chiefs, the local leaders within that community, the elders, the men, the women, the media. Let us involve everybody. And when we start having that discourse, then we'll be able at least to show them why this thing is not good for them. Mm-hmm. And then we have to also to give the girls the reassurance that actually it doesn't matter the kind of name that you're called, because you have to build on their, because already they feel undermined. This is a woman who is looked down upon. So how do we build their confidence for them to understand that even without undergoing this female genital mutilation, I'm still a woman, a total woman. I can still be a woman. I can bear kids. I can be somebody's wife. I can be, not just a wife. There are more things to life than just becoming a wife. Mm-hmm. There are more things to life than just, a job. There's a lot that holds for these children. Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to sit down and start empowering them. And the conversation should be at different levels. Mm-hmm. The conversation should target the perpetrators, the women who are doing it. Some of these women don't know what you're talking about. The law doesn't work for them. For some of them, it's also a career. So how do we even engage them by giving them alternative kind of jobs to be doing instead of, waiting for every December or waiting for every April for them to cut the girls, for them to get that payment? So by looking at the whole thing comprehensively and looking at all other ways that can work, then I think that is the best way. That is the best way in some of, addressing those things that have not been addressed. And again, we also need funding, and funding is not just to the civil society groups, but funding also needs to go to the prosecution. Funding needs to go to the investigators. I've just given you an experience of what I saw the police officers go through. You can imagine going through a rough terrain and carrying a body because they had to carry down the body. And this body, you can't put it anywhere. I said you can't even use a car, you can't use the motorbike. So literally they had physically to carry the body down, and this is a body that has been buried for a few days. So by trying to understand some of the challenges that are being faced by the people on the front line, or the people who are supposed to be fighting this practice, then if we don't support them, then we'll have failed. And these are some of the things. For example, if we look at Witness Protection Agency, whom do we offer protection in first place, probably murder cases and all that. But if we don't look at issues of GBV, look issues of like female genital mutilation, and start treating them with that kind of seriousness that is required by ensuring witnesses are protected, then how will we be fighting it? Because if you go and, for example, you've been violated and I'm supposed to call you as a witness, and I still tell you, go back to the father, go back to your family, and it's your mother and father who did it, but I still go record the statement and I still tell you, go back to them. What happens? The next time you're coming, you're compromised. Even if these people are arrested, they're taken to jail. The community goes and starts telling you, you'll be cast. You cannot, go speak evil against your mother or father. So what do? You go back and refuse to recant all the entire evidence. At the end of
the case, you will still go back to the same family, the same community.
Yes. So lack of accountability is one of the things that are also been fueling practice of female genital mutilation.
Judie, I'll come back to you. Tony, what would be your addition to, the point that Judie is raising, the challenges that are there when it comes to access to justice for victims who have undergone the cut? What is it that you can share with us with regards to that particular issue?
Thank you so much. Allow me to say that laws alone cannot end FGM. If we leave it to the law, it should be the last resort. Well, that is the right thing that we can do to ending FGM. So as she said earlier, we need to ensure that we have dialogue with the community members. We have the survivors, we have the children, the young girls and boys, we have the elders, we have everyone on board, the law enforcers, the chiefs, the religious leaders also play a very key role in the fight against FGM. We need to understand that in some of the communities in Kenya, FGM is seen as a religious requirement, especially among the Muslim communities. And this is a myth that has been affecting the fight against FGM within those communities. So we need to go deeper and see how we can be able to engage them. And then using all the other strategies that she talked about, then we are going to be able to have a conversation around FGM, and people are going to understand and end FGM. But for the law itself alone, it's not possible to end FGM with the law.
I'll borrow one of your statements that many people have always believed that we should not praise the fish for swimming. Is it about time we should start praising the fish for swimming? You understand the context. Well, I'm drawing that from with regards to men in this conversation. So should we praise the fish for swimming?
Yes, allow me to say that I know that one you got from one of my blogs, and I was speaking about there has been a conversation out there whereby people feel like men should automatically speak about FGM. But I've always been challenging them and telling them it's not automatic. We need to lobby them, we need to rally them, we need to encourage them, we need to sensitize them, we need to make them understand why FGM is an harmful cultural practice. So it's not automatic, because if, for example, we look at the structure and the way our country is, and coming from a patriarchal society, most of the men are the ones who are sitting in decision-making positions. If you go to the county levels, right now most of the counties are coming up with gender policies. Most of them are coming up with anti-FGM policies. But if we look at the majority of MCAs who are supposed to allocate the resources to these policies, they are men. If you go to our churches, for example, the Catholic denomination, all the priests are men. If you go to the Muslim society, the sheikhs are men. So we need to make sure that we bring them into the conversation, because if I'm a sheikh and I decide not to talk to FGM, what do I lose? But if you make me understand, if you talk to me, if you show me the harmful effects of FGM, and then I join the conversation around FGM, then we benefit all of us. So we should not ignore the men and assume that because That is a mistake that we have been doing, that since the men have the power, since the men sit in these positions, since the men have the resources or they're the decision makers, since most of the men are the judges, are the police officers, are the chiefs, then it's automatic for them to speak about FGM. No. We need to recognize them, we need to encourage them, we need to have them join the conversation, and by doing so, then we will be able to speed up the fight against FGM. See what the president talking about FGM and being the man, the #1 man in Kenya has done. Right now we have county steering committees around FGM which are headed by the county commissioners in all the FGM practicing counties. We have seen the Ministry of Education speaking about FGM. They never used to do that so much. The Ministry of Health is joining in the conversation. We have Matiang'i himself and the CAS, Rachel Shebesh, moving around and talking to the chiefs. We saw 5 chiefs lose their jobs in Korea for not acting on FGM. So the government is finally working because someone somewhere spoke and said we need to move this conversation. So we cannot assume that it's automatic that the men will speak up about FGM, but we need to have them join the conversation.
All right, you reminded me of he was actually reaffirming his initial commitment for the country to end FGM in the year 2022 during the ICPD 25 conference. 2022, we are just about a few months to 2022. I'm not being pessimistic, but can we meet the target?
Well, allow me to say that they say if your dream is not big enough to scare you, then it's not a realistic one. But let me say that what the president's dream has done, the dream of ending FGM by the year 2022, is it has opened so many avenues. I will say this categorically, without fear of any contradiction, that we will not be able to end FGM by the year 2022. Why am I saying this? We have communities in Kenya, for example, the Somali community. According to Kenya Demographic Health Survey of 2014, the Somali community is at 94%. 9 out of every 10 girls in that community have undergone FGM. The Samburus come in at #2 at 86%, 8 out of 10. Then we have the Kisis at #3 at 84%. Then come down there, we have the Maasais at 78%. Then we have Merus and Embus at 31%. And then we have the Kalenjin community at 28%. And then we have the national prevalence at 21%. So we have so many communities which are way above the national prevalence. And if you look at the way we are in Kenya, for example, in Kapedo, where we have the Kalenjins, the prevalence is much higher than what is reported at the national level because the Kalenjins are very vast. We don't have any county-specific data. So with the fighting, for example, that is going on in Kapedo right now, and the skirmishes, the banditry, and what is happening there, do you expect agencies to go in there and start talking about FGM? For now, it's not a priority for them. The same thing where we have 94% in Mandera County. It's unstable. People cannot even go there and start having the conversation. So that's why I'm saying it's not possible to end FGM by 2022. But what the commitment by the president, he made it first in Vancouver and then he reaffirmed it the same year at ICPD in Nairobi. Whatever it has done is it has made the systems to start opening up and people to start having the conversations. The chiefs are coming in. We have seen different government departments coming in. The other day, the parliamentarians were discussing about adding money to anti-FGM board or funding it more in parliament. These were things that were not happening before. So the conversation is happening up, and we cannot say that the commitment by president is all in vain. It's doing something. It's going to make us... Yes, there's the goodwill, and we are going to make significant...
I'm expecting a different response from you, Judie. Give me hope. 2022 is around the corner. Do you think we can meet the target?
I'll not lie to you.
A hopeful message for Kenyans.
I will not lie to you. Yes, a lot of progress has been made. If you look at the statistics, some years back, I mean, really, we were worse off. So there's a bit of progress that has been made, but still we see these things happening and we see new tactics being employed to continue carrying the practice of female genital mutilation. And because of, you know, this mutation and these new tactics, and because of also desperation and people taking advantage of the situation that we are in, like now you realize the COVID-19 has changed a lot of things. Most of these organizations, including the government agencies, were not able to function as as normally as they would have wanted to happen. So a lot of gains that we had before COVID-19 have unfortunately been affected by the pandemic. And so because of all these different things,
it's not possible. We are coming back to pick up from there. Let's go quickly to Mombasa County and follow up on what our reporter Ann Buru is tracking for us this particular morning.
Identified because we are Africans, sharing the same culture, the same tribe, and that is very good relationship, and we get a lot of support from Kenya. And since we become part of Port of Mombasa, we are still able actually to make sure that we use the Port of Mombasa, and also to encourage the business community to make sure that they import very good volume. We hope this year, I think, will be the best year for all of us. We remember last year, because of COVID-19, affected all global. We lost a lot of lives, very important people, and 2011, 2001, I think is the best year for all of us, especially in terms of trade facilitation and family also to recover. I want also to give thanks to other countries. I mean, especially our good friends to Uganda. They also make sure that they protect our food the other side. When our food are in Kenya, they secure our food are in the hand of Kenya. That is why they integrate the regional component. I think it's very important and it's very effective monitoring the food along the corridor. And as soon as they exit the point of Malaba, I think it is the URA, Kenya, the Uganda authority to take care of our food until they exit the South Sudan. Because all secures our food.
They'll not talk about it even on 6th.
Yeah. All right. That is from Mombasa County as we are marking International Customs Day, an event that is currently underway. A lot of issues are also emanating from there. We are going to be tracking that for you. Ann Buru is part of that particular event, and she will be giving us more details as the broadcast progresses. Now in studio, we're already having a very heated conversation about FGM. And right now, in case you're just joining us, we are on the way forward. We just want to understand what are some of the strategies we can employ to sort of come up with a long-lasting solution to eradicate this vice that has been there in our society for centuries, something that our forefathers and our ancestors used to practice, and unfortunately so in this modern day and age, even after the much level of awareness that has been conducted across the different communities, we still have it. And I just want us to pick up from there, Judie and Tony. And Judie, earlier Tony talked about, the political goodwill and the role the leadership can play, and even citing a very good example on what the declaration by President Uhuru Kenyatta has done, change the narrative completely in the war against FGM. Probably also you can talk to us about those who are in the front line, those who are leading us, the so-called opinion shapers. Yeah. What can they do?
You know, Tony said it with a lot of pride. Oh, we have, of course, priests. We can do nothing about the priests. We have the, caddies and all that. So basically, you already see there's a problem when you talk about leadership. We have more men at positions of power, positions of you know, making decisions, whether it's policy, whether it's resource allocation. So I think one of the ways is to ensure that we have more women at the decision-making table, so that women, you see, also they have a perspective that sometimes the men forget. The same way women have a perspective that men don't see, the same way men have a perspective that women don't see. And that's why when we talk about equality in terms of representation, it ensures where both genders are equally represented, such as there are no issues that are undermined, that is serious issues like issues of female genital mutilation are prioritized. Probably if we have more women at positions of power, more women at positions where they can be able to make decisions and even allocate resources, probably female genital mutilation will be prioritized. And that's why we are saying this narrative, it's not just talking about the practice itself. Behind it, surrounding it, around it, there are a lot of issues that we need to address. And some of these issues is about representation. And representation comes with leadership, it comes with election, it comes with how do we even treat our women when they're vying for political positions, when they're in parliament, or even when they're at positions of power. How do we attack them compared to how we treat the male colleagues? And those small nitty-gritties are what contribute to some of these practices to continue happening right under our watch. And that's why we are saying the issue of female genital mutilation. It's got so many other issues that we need to look at. And I'm happy that Tony brought it out, but don't say it please with pride. Try to tone down a bit when you say men are in charge, you look at this and that.
Women also need to be on the table.
Women also need to be on the table. And once they're on the table, this can happen. But again,
but for now, you have to agree that because they're having some of these positions of influence, the men can really play a pivotal role.
I'm really happy, especially seeing even our own president taking a lead in that, and a lot of other male people have also taken it forward. Like we are saying, this conversation cannot be won by one group alone. It cannot be won by only women alone. That is why we should come together collectively and bringing together the knowledge, the resources, our capacities, the moment we bring them together. And the good thing, there's already the political will. When there's a political will, at least, let's say, there's a way. Unfortunately, sometimes some of these things don't get prioritized because a lot of other things come, come across. The pandemics come, the BBI come, a lot of things come along the way. And somehow we tend to look to start losing sight of, the commitment of some of the things that we said we'll do as per 2022.
All right.
Yeah.
When you talk about this political goodwill, Tony, is it genuine? Because I'm looking at some of these political leaders who come from the practicing communities. How often do we hear noise about anti-FGM coming from them? Because for me, I believe if it comes from that, angle, it would make more sense and it would be more impactful. Is it a genuine political goodwill?
Thank you so much. Allow me to say that having women representation and sitting in positions of decision does not guarantee us that we allow allocations for ending FGM and all these things. It's all about personal commitment. And as we said at the beginning of the conversation, FGM is everyone's business. The men also need to understand that it's their business. Because the moment, yes, I completely understand about having more women representation in the positions of power, decision makings, and what have you. But we are already turning it again now to a women's issue. So women have to be in the decision-making table for there to be resources for FGM. That should not be the notion. It should be, it's a human rights violation as FGM. Just like we talk about any other form of human rights violation, it should be an issue for everyone. Every legislator who is out there, every MP who is out there, every person who is sitting in a position of decision-making should understand that it's a human rights violation. It's not a women's issue. Then that we will be able to make significant gains. Also, when you talk about the politicians, there has been a notion that if you go out there and speak about FGM, you're likely to lose the votes. And so many of the politicians are feared to come up and condemn FGM openly because they fear it's a cultural thing. And if you look at some of the communities, for example, it's about clanism, it's about people making the decisions. The elders you're challenging are the ones who are supposed to sit down and appoint you as their representative and say, this is the person we are voting for. Yet again, they are the custodians of the same culture that you're opposing.
So those are some tricky dilemma.
Yes, so those are some of the dynamics. But Now, with the president speaking up, we have seen more of the parliamentarians and most of the people in positions of leadership coming up and speaking up openly about FGM. People are now gaining courage, and people are speaking up and saying, it's okay, we need to have this conversation. And that's why we are saying, let us not assume by the virtue of someone being a politician, by the virtue of someone being an MCA, by the virtue of someone being a chief, that they have changed their perception around FGM. What we need to do is we need to normalize the conversation at the community level. Are we speaking about FGM ourselves at the family level? If we are not, then let us not blame our MP or MCA or the religious leader for not speaking about FGM. How normalized is it within the community when we go for the gatherings, when we go to the church, when we go to the normal things that we do, when we go to watch football as men? How often does FGM come up? If we are able to normalize this conversation, then the politicians and the people in positions of influence will not shy away from speaking about the same, because they will just join in the conversation. But as long as we have not normalized it as ourselves, as the community, as the people, then we do not have the right to challenge our politicians
to do the same.
Yeah,
because they depend on us to be where they are. Yeah. So if they're challenging what the community is actually advocating for, then they risk losing their position. So you're actually placing them at a very awkward position in leadership. I want to understand something, because Judie, they say FGM is mutating. The way it was done back then is not how it's being done right now. Perpetrators have become very crafty. Do you think perhaps it's time to change craft? What is what would you say are some of the trends that have come up that we need to be sensitive to going forward as we address this issue?
Like before, we would expect female genital mutilation to be done in, like, a certain place where they all gather in a field and all girls undergo the female genital mutilation. But some of the things that we've seen them doing is the circumciser going to their home and doing it secretly. So instead of her sitting at one place and we bring the girls, they are able to move from home to home. Another thing is that some of them cross the border. They can be able to cross, especially the ones that live towards the Kenya-Tanzania border. They can be able to cross the border, do it, and come and, be quiet about it. Also, we've seen areas where it was like a ceremony, to go through it, you'll have that ceremony. As that, we will be aware there's some female genital mutilation that is taking place. But you see, they've been able to camouflage and be able, to normalize things as much as possible. And sneaking them out, doing it quietly. Also in hospitals. Like now, I understand there are hospitals where you can take girls, get them cut, and go back home. So it just looks like somebody was sick. I take them to the hospital, they come, they're still unwell, and they stay in the house for like a few days for them to recover. And one thing I actually wanted to say when I spoke about having women at the decision-making table or positions of power, it's an issue of empowering women. And empowering does not mean just empowering the elite. Does not mean empowering the ones who we see in parliament. Does not mean the ones we see carrying a flag. But it's empowering a woman even with information. You empower a woman with information that she's able to know this is not a good practice for me. And information for me, that's what I mean by empowering. Giving them like the alternatives. Like, I've seen this being done in different communities that have been empowered to go through rituals that look like female genital mutilation, but there are alternative ways of, sitting down to advise the girl. If this is the only time they think this is the time I need to talk to this girl to make her know that she's growing to a woman, then I have the alternative right where I can still do it. And this is the kind of empowerment that I mean. So empowerment basically is not just about elevating somebody to power, but it's empowering even the youngest girl in that community. It's empowering that woman in that community for her to be able to know this is good for me, this is bad for me. If I do this, I'll be a better person, I'll be a better citizen. If I do this, this is going to work out better. So actually empowerment does not just mean about positions, but even it's about allocating resources. For example, if I empower the parents, they can be able to take the girl to school. Some of them probably do it because they don't have money to take this girl to school. But there's somebody who says, if I marry your daughter, I'm going to give you cattle. So basically the empowerment, it involves more than just talking about leadership. And leadership is also very key. And that's why we are saying, for example, can you imagine if we had majority or even half men and women MCAs, we'll be able to pick out and we'll be able to, because the problem that we don't have more women at positions where they can be able to influence and talk, then it shows some of these things will just be swept under the table. But if we have at least all of them at the table talking about it, and you know, then it helps. The power is more than, you know, when we have one gender talking about it. And these are some of the issues that we are talking about. In a clean political environment. Clean political environment.
Because
that is what, and you know, Tony, let me tell you one thing. In some circumstances,
you'd find the same women being,
you know, we said that gender rule. Today we are talking, it's the women that is disempowered. It's, you know, the gender that has a lot of disadvantages. But you never know. In 5 years, you've had already, we are crying for the boy child. So you never know.
The
probably that
can change.
The gender rule, people have not even understood it. What is gender? Gender is not about a woman and a man. It means either. You know, it's the way we've been socialized. But unfortunately, we think when we talk about gender parity, people think it's women parity. No, but we just mean where there's no gender that is overpowered. All right. Yes.
Tony, I want you to do something for me. I find this very useful. I want you to look straight into your camera and talk to a young girl from a community that is still practicing female genital mutilation. They feel, if I do not undergo the cut, I'm not woman enough to be anybody's wife. Also talk to a man who feels, I cannot marry a woman who has not undergone a cut. She's not woman enough, she's not valuable enough to be my wife or to be the mother of my children. As a man, I want you to take that chance and just talk to this young girl.
Well, to everyone who is watching out there, a young girl out there in the community, what I would like to tell you is times have changed. You do not have to be forced to undergo FGM, because when people take you to undergo FGM, no one tells you about the harmful effects of FGM. What they tell you is about the nice things that will follow after you undergo FGM. You're going to have so many people who are going to admire you. Your family is going to get wealth in terms of dowry, cows, and what have you. But no one sits you down and tells you these are the harmful effects of FGM. That's the most unfortunate part. And even when you're admiring to go for FGM, your parents and the people around you and the community never ever tell you about the harmful effects of FGM or what you're going to face after you undergo FGM, the trauma, the pain, the suffering, the long-term effects of FGM. No one talks about that. So let us understand that times are changing, and to the men out there, I would like to tell you that FGM is an harmful cultural practice. It affects your wives, it affects your sisters, it affects your cousins, it affects your girlfriends. And what we are supposed to do is we need to join together in the fight against FGM and say enough is enough. No other girl should undergo FGM in our community. And once we do that, then we will be able to protect our loved ones, we will be able to move together as a community, and we will be able to stop FGM, because FGM is everyone's business and it starts with you and me.
All right. Thank you, Tony, for doing that favor for me. Now, Judie, I also want you to do something for me. That's your camera number 3. We have just been talking about female genital mutilation. Many people do not understand how it changes the narrative and the course of life for this young girl. Coming from a community that has actually been ranked among the list of communities that practice FGM, I want you to help somebody understand that when you make a young girl undergo the cut, this is exactly what you're doing for her, to her.
Yes, one of the side effects, you can imagine, this is a young girl 9, 10 years or 12 years old, a girl who had dreams, a girl who knew that one day she'd be somebody. But suddenly you're changing the mindset of this girl. This is a girl who wanted to be with her friends, to play with them, you know, enjoy her childhood, you know, without fearing that she'd be, you know, forced to go into a stage that she was not ready for. Just going through the cut does not actually, you know, make her to become a woman. It's just the name, just that ritual that you force her to become a woman that she's not. So every young child, every young girl has the right to enjoy her childhood. She has her right, you know, to go to school like any other child. This child, you know, should enjoy to be in a classroom where she can, you know, talk of that science, talk of that physics, you know, be creative, and probably this is the next mind that probably is going to solve some of the societal problems that we are facing. And that is why it is important for us to let our children be who they are. Let us not dictate for them. Let us not force them. Let us not, you know, make them to undergo through so much suffering that interferes with their life, interferes with their childhood, and interferes with their education. And we also need to make them dream big. And like we have said, dreaming big does not mean just bringing up a girl to become a wife. we are bringing up our girls. Yes, they can be wives, but they can also be the doctors, they can be the pilots, they can be the service providers that the country needs, for example, to go to the next level. Probably they are the next doctors who are going to get the cure for COVID-19. Probably they are the next girls who are going to get the cure for HIV and AIDS. So I think their destiny, it's not just about becoming a wife, but I think it's more than that. And that is why a cultural practice should not be the one that is used to curtail the dreams of that young child.
Add something about the complications that come with, because after a girl has undergone the cut, they are now declared a woman. You can get married. This is still a young girl. She will get pregnant. Talk to us about the complications that come thereafter.
Unfortunately, of course, we've realized that female genital mutilation can lead to death, especially where there's overbleeding. Apart from that, the genitalia are completely destroyed. In some cases, sometimes I've watched images of photos that I couldn't even want to watch myself as a journalist. I would try to look at them, but I was even unable to look at them because a lot of things happen. Things of fistula, where the urine mixes with the waste, whatever from the body, and these girls face a lot of discrimination because of the smell that comes with fistula. Apart from that, giving birth also has a lot of complications. Some of them could lose the pregnancies. Others also die during birth. Apart from that, you can imagine you've given birth and they cannot even leave the hospital because they have to stay on, or even some of them when they're pregnant, they're not even able to stay with that baby for long because of the kind of trauma that they suffered and the kind of injuries that were suffered during female genital mutilation. Also remember the people who carry out female genital mutilation. Which school did they attend? Where did they go to know about surgery and about cutting people's body parts? So the thought of itself that you're dealing with is an amateur like me. It's like giving me a knife and telling me to, remove this part of your body. I can't do it because I don't have that experience. So even understanding the kind of women who carry out this practice should be able to make people understand the kind of, it's like a trial and error method. I'm just guessing what should I cut. And you never
so as a parent, you may be doing it out of love, but you're handing over your child to somebody who may not have the necessary expertise for performing such a procedure.
Yes.
All right. We're almost running out of time for this conversation, unfortunately, but there's still more to talk about. I want us to, utilize the few minutes remaining. And Tony, the International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation is coming up just the first week of February, the 6th of February. As a country, what are we doing? What are some of the issues that probably we are focusing on, or plans that are underway currently?
Thank you so much. Allow me to say that the theme for this year's Zero Tolerance Day is Unite, Act and Fund to end female genital mutilation. So it's calling for an end to global inaction around FGM. It's challenging everyone working around FGM, governments, activists, NGOs, and everyone, to make sure that we unite and work together as a team. And we also act. We take action from wherever we are sitting down. Action within our families, action within the government, action within the media houses. Everyone to act, and then we fund and ensure that we move together in the fight against FGM. So I am aware that the national celebrations will be done in West Pokot County at a place called Alale. That is the border of Kenya and Uganda. So I believe the whole thing is to be able to address the cross-border cutting, as you mentioned earlier. So we already have some build-up activities that are happening within that area. I have seen some activities by UNICEF Kenya, with World Vision Kenya, and other activists working around West Pokot County. We are also trying to see, as an organization, if we can be able to train some male champions within that county as a build-up activity to the day. But that is not the only celebration that will be happening. We will have several other celebrations happening in different places, in different counties, at the county headquarters of different organizations. I'm aware people in Garissa, people in Mandera, people in different places are organizing different small events that are going to be happening on that day.
All right, thank you so much. Judie, also a chance for you to give us your final words.
Yes, as we mark this day, let us remember this is a collective responsibility for everybody, the media, the government, the civil society organizations, the NGOs. It is a role for all of us to play. There is a role for all of us to play in creating awareness, in educating the members of the public, but also in holding to account or in putting to account the perpetrators of this harmful practice in the communities. And thus, I mean, also we need a lot of empowerment, whether it's a prosecution, whether it's investigators. We need to empower them, you know, with the experiences, with the skills, and also fund them to be able to reach out, especially, you know, where this kind of practice is done as some quite remote areas, which require a lot of expertise and a lot of resources for them to be able to get some of these criminals.
All right, thank you so much, Judie, for that. Judie Kaberia, she is a journalist and a human rights advocate, and of course she has earned quite a number of awards in the stories she has done to shed some light on the impact of this particular vice in the society. And I was also having this conversation with Tony Mwebia, the founder and executive director, Men and FGM. Thank you so much, both of you, for creating time for us. Tony says, "My sisters do not allow men to misuse you. They go to school and become professors while you remain at home fetching water and taking care of children. Fellow men, women are the most underutilized resource in this world. Let's give them a chance to excel and control their lives." That is part of an article I read that was done by Tony. And that is actually how I'd like to bring this conversation to a close. Think about that. Women are the most underutilized resource. Give them a chance to thrive. I cannot water that down.